Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. On a cold, rainy night, the gas station attendant mops the floor while listening to music. Outside, a terrified woman named Nancy pounds on the doors, asking for help. Instead of letting her in, the attendant switches off the open sign and sends her away. The woman then runs to the nearby phone booth and calls the police. She frantically explains that her husband and son have been taken, but the energy in the phone booth runs out and interrupts the call. Lights flash around the phone booth, and the woman screams after a blinding flash. Seconds later, the attendant exits the store and searches for the woman. He walks to where the phone booth used to be, but the cement platform is all that remains. The startled attendant turns to head back to the store when the phone booth falls again and collides with the platform. A few hours later, Sheriff Murphy arrives at the gas station and finds Nancy's wallet in the rubble. He wonders where she could be before looking up at the sky. In an apartment in the city, April finishes a phone call with her mother while packing a bag for the weekend. She asks her boyfriend, Kyle, if he is sure he wants to go with her, and he says he is looking forward to relaxing after a tough semester. Then, April receives a video call from her father, who can't believe her mother is making April drive to the cabin to take pictures. He believes his ex-wife is just selling the house to irritate him before asking his daughter to retrieve some items from the place. April makes a list, including a double-barreled shotgun from the basement. A few minutes later, their friend Seif buzzes April's intercom, asking what is taking so long. Kyle didn't inform April that he invited Seif, his girlfriend Lex, and childhood friend Melanie to the cabin. On the drive to the destination, Seif lights a flare inside the car and shoots it out of the sunroof. Kyle tells him to stop, but Seif says not to worry because there is no one else on the road. Minutes later, Sheriff Murphy pulls them over and warns them to behave while they are in town. The sheriff lets them go, and the group continues to their destination. April sees the for sale sign outside the cabin and averts her gaze solemnly. Inside the cabin, Melanie remembers the last time they were there while watching her dog, Rusty, happily running in the yard. April and her parents used to go there every summer when she was younger. April steps outside to grab her camera, and Kyle asks if she needs help. She declines and avoids a kiss from her boyfriend. Minutes later, the friends drink alcohol and use substances by the pool. Later that day, Sheriff Murphy investigates a pig carcass on a local farm. The cut on its body is clean, precise, and does not appear to be a wild animal attack. Back in the car, Sheriff Murphy looks at a photo of his wife and continues to ponder the strange occurrences in the town. On a hiking trail, April and Melanie take Rusty for a walk, and Melanie tells her to consider taking Kyle to New York with her. She expresses her anxieties about marrying and having kids with her childhood sweetheart. Suddenly, Rusty barks at something in the trees and runs toward a fenced property. April and Melanie enter a greenhouse with an illegal plantation inside the seemingly abandoned property. When they are about to leave, a man wearing a gas mask and wielding an axe confuses them for intruders until he recognizes April. He removes the mask and introduces himself as a friend of April's father, Travis. Inside Travis's house are weapons and tools from his time as a soldier in Vietnam. He shows them a printed image of a comet-shaped object captured by his thermal cameras, which he believes to be a military aircraft. He then spills government conspiracy theories and explains why he chooses to live off the grid. Later, at the cabin, Kyle talks to April privately in the room, where he kneels and proposes to her. She did not expect the proposal and intended to tell him about the job offer in New York this weekend, thinking it would just be the two of them. She declines his proposal, and he storms out of the room, where their friends pop champagne and throw confetti, hoping for a different outcome. At the station, Sheriff Murphy reviews the gas station's security camera footage. He sees Nancy in the phone booth, but the video is corrupted for a few seconds before returning to the footage of the missing phone booth. He scans the video frame by frame and finds one with the phone booth seemingly floating in the air. On the cabin porch, Kyle asks April why she declined his proposal. She explains that she does not believe in marriage as Kyle does because of how her parents turned out. In the middle of the discussion, a comet-shaped object flies above the cabin and crashes a few hundred meters away. Minutes later, the friends drive toward the crash site, which Kyle thinks is a plane, but Seif is perplexed by its red glow. As they approach the crash site, they discover a disc-shaped spaceship. Kyle holds a piece of debris and notes how light it is. Lex panics and goes back to the car but sees footprints in the mud leading into the trees, so she alerts the others. Back at the cabin, the friends gather in the living room during a storm. Lex wants to leave as soon as possible, and April agrees because the footprints are leading toward the cabin. Kyle tries to calm everyone down, but the electricity goes out and they panic. April suggests checking the circuit breaker in the basement. In the lower room, Kyle tries to fix the circuit breaker but gets shocked when the screwdriver touches it, creating a spark. Then they hear Rusty barking from upstairs, followed by a few seconds of silence. Suddenly, a loud crash startles the group, and Rusty starts barking again. April remembers her father's shotgun and loads it. They hear a commotion from upstairs, followed by Rusty's whimpering. The friends quietly exit the basement and find the front door open. Kyle closes it, and they continue checking the rest of the house. While April turns her back to the porch, Kyle sees a tall gray alien on the other side of the glass door. She sees the expression on its face and quickly turns around and fires. Outside the house, the group finds black blood near the pool and the alien floating lifeless in the shallow water. Immediately, the friends back away from the cabin but encounter a large fallen tree in the road. Then, April, Kyle, and Sif get out of the car to take a closer look. Seconds later, Kyle notices that the rain has stopped, but when Sif returns to the car, he sees a wall of rain inches from his face. He looks up at the sky, and suddenly everything around him is engulfed in an ominous red light. They run back to the car, but when Kyle turns on the ignition, the car's electronics explode. Moments later, Lex gets out of the car, but instead of escaping, she stands still and gazes at the source of the light. Above her, an alien ship shines a beam of light on her. She floats off the ground for a few seconds before being sucked into the spacecraft. Her friends watch in horror as she disappears, and the group runs to save their lives in the woods. Elsewhere, Sheriff Murphy inspects an abandoned campsite where he finds a video camera on the floor of the trailer and watches the last video of Nancy, her husband, Jeffrey, and her son, Maddie. He watches footage of a red, glowing object in the sky and a beam of light hitting Maddie and lifting him off the ground. Suddenly, the sheriff hears a noise from the bedroom and goes to check. Inside the bedroom, Nancy emerges from a closet and swings a bat at the sheriff but misses. She cowers in the corner, looking disheveled and traumatized, so he reassures her that he won't hurt her. She says the aliens took Jeffrey and Maddie and conducted experiments on the abducted humans. She claims the aliens held her and put terrible thoughts in her head. The friends end up at Travis's house, where Sif shows him the video from the accident site and tells him everything that happened. Minutes later, Travis tells them a long-standing conspiracy theory that the government has had a treaty with extraterrestrials since the Roswell incident. The government allows aliens to abduct humans if they leave most of Earth's population alone. Both sides have a rule to follow, which is not to interfere. Travis thinks April broke the treaty when she shot the alien and that they want revenge. Melanie interrupts the conversation when Travis's sonar detects a spaceship approaching. After a few seconds, the spaceship disappears from the sonar. They think the ship took off, but Travis says it merely landed. Suddenly, all the electronics explode, and the power goes out. Travis grabs a machine gun, activates a glow stick, and tells them to move. The group grabs glow sticks and runs through the greenhouse. Travis instructs April to head down a path back to the cabin, preferring to stay and defend his home. As Travis heads back, he sees a perfectly cut circle from the house to the greenhouse. Behind him, a tall alien passes in the shadows and hides before he turns around to shoot. He hides under a table and fires when the alien is on top of the table. Black blood seeps from the bullet holes in the table and drips onto his face. Convinced he has taken down the alien, Travis crawls out from underneath the table. Then, suddenly, a four-fingered alien hand grabs his head. At the campsite, Nancy tells Sheriff Murphy to help the others still inside the spaceship. The aliens returned her, but hundreds of people are still on the spacecraft, some having been there for years. The sheriff then returns to his car, looks at a missing person flyer of his wife, and wonders if aliens abducted her. At the cabin, the friends barricade the house and seal the windows. Minutes later, they hear a noise outside the front door. Sif looks through the peephole but only sees total darkness. April looks and sees the same until the alien steps back, and she realizes they had been staring into the alien's black eye. Frightened, April recoils in fear and tells them that the alien is right outside the door. The doorknob is being turned from the outside, so Sif grabs the shotgun and points it at the door. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and Sif fires at the bright light flooding the entrance. Sheriff Murphy and Officer Mitchell tell the group to raise their hands. The sheriff asks April why they abandoned the car by the side of the road, then she tells him everything, and Mitchell laughs at her story. A few seconds later, April says she will show Murphy the alien in the pool. The sheriff asks her and Kyle to follow him while Mitchell stays with Sif and Melanie. Melanie opens a pill container and ingests a capsule. Outside, the alien is no longer in the pool, then they hear a crash from the garage. The sheriff then tells April and Kyle to head back to the house. Inside the garage, Murphy goes up to the attic and accidentally touches alien blood. He finds Rusty whimpering on the floor with his entrails exposed. Suddenly, a shadow quickly passes by him, and he turns and shoots, but it escapes through the window. He looks out the window and sees the creature moving among the tree branches. In the police car, Mitchell continues mocking Sif, who is handcuffed in the back seat. Murphy returns and tells Mitchell that April and her friends are telling the truth. Mitchell sees the flyer with Murphy's missing wife on it and tells him to move on after 10 years of searching for her. Murphy believes what happened to his wife is what happened to Lex. When the sheriff turns on the headlights, they see the alien in front of the car. The alien puts the sheriff in a trance and makes him shoot Mitchell in the stomach. He then points the shotgun at himself and blows his head off. Sif screams in fear and tries to get out of the car while being covered in the sheriff's blood. Minutes later, April pulls Sif from the car and they return to the cabin. Inside the cabin, Sif explains how the alien controlled the sheriff's mind. He waves the gun frantically and tells Melanie and Kyle to join him back in town. Sif wants April to stay because the aliens only want her, but Melanie and Kyle refuse to leave her behind. Sif is adamant about escaping, so he leaves the cabin alone. After Sif exits, the cabin begins to tremble, the red light floods the room, and a loud, high-pitched sound disorients the three friends. They fall to the ground, covering their bleeding ears. When the sound stops, the floorboards suddenly begin to lift, so they get up and run to the basement door. After April and Melanie enter the basement, Kyle closes the door and reinforces it with a shelf. He wants the girls to survive, so despite April's protests, he goes to the kitchen to grab a knife. He stops halfway down the stairs when he sees the alien entering the cabin. He grabs the alien's attention and runs to the bathroom, where he hides in the bathtub. Meanwhile, Sif hears a growling noise in the woods. He shoots aimlessly around him until he runs out of bullets. Suddenly, an alien attacks him, tearing his clothes and covering him in scratches. A bright red light shines down from above, and he, terrified, handcuffs himself to a tree branch. When the white beam shines on him, he disappears, leaving his arm hanging on the branch. In the basement, April and Melanie reminisce about the happy times they had at the cabin when they were kids. April sees the empty pill container slip from Melanie's hand, realizing she may have taken too many sleeping pills. Melanie cries and apologizes to April for ruining her life this way to avoid being abducted. In the bathroom, Kyle hears footsteps and jumps out of the bathtub, but he is completely alone. He looks at his reflection in the mirror, then an alien arm bursts through and grabs him. In the basement, April realizes the sounds from the spaceship are getting fainter. She exits the basement and sees the cabin destroyed. The power returns, and she finds a diamond ring in a pool of blood on the floor. When April realizes the aliens took Kyle, she runs outside screaming for the spaceship to come back. Desperate, April lights Sif's firework and points it toward the spaceship while crying, wishing they would take her. Suddenly, a bright red light surrounds her, and then a beam of white light pulls her into the sky. On the spaceship, April regains consciousness while wrapped in a sticky black web. She tears through the web and frees herself from the restraints. Then, she walks to the end of the tunnel and sees a massive alien structure where the spaceships fly to. Elsewhere, Sif is strapped to a vertical gurney and writhing in pain. A mechanical arm shoots an alien insect into his body. The insect crawls inside his belly button, and he screams in pain. The component then fires lasers and burns a symbol onto his chest. A few seconds later, the gurney turns, and he hears a rotating probe approaching his rear end. The probe pierces that part of his body and quickly withdraws, spraying Sif's blood everywhere, ending his life. Meanwhile, April finds Kyle and helps him out of the black web. She cries and apologizes for rejecting his proposal, saying she should have said yes. Kyle finally wakes up, and they embrace. The couple notices the aliens watching them, and one points its arm while a white light shines around them. Moments later, April and Kyle wake up in the middle of the forest. They stand up happily after the episode, hold hands, and walk together. Later, the couple hears people in vehicles nearby and walks toward them. In a clearing, the couple sees the army, and April asks for help with a smile on her face. As April approaches, she is shot in the stomach and falls to the ground. Kyle tries to stop the soldiers, but he is shot multiple times and collapses beside her. As they lie on the ground, April hands Kyle the diamond ring, and he slips it onto her finger. Then, the soldiers finish the job and shoot them at point-blank range. A few feet away, a high-ranking military officer informs a man in a black suit about the incident from the previous night. He says the storm caused the crash and that there were minimal casualties. At the crash site, men in protective suits clear the debris while scientists keep a living alien inside a capsule. Meanwhile, the soldiers toss April and Kyle into a hole in the ground and burn their bodies before burying them, in yet another demonstration of human evil and injustice against oneself.